Hello and welcome back to the Renewables podcast. It is me, Mark, and I'm joined again by my co-host, Sam. And we've got a guest from the Installershow this week, Lucy Dixon. Before we go to speak to Lucy, how are you doing, Sam?
I'm very good. I'm very good. Glad to be still doing these. We haven't fallen out yet, which is good. But yeah, really good and ready to get into this one because I'm a little bit in the dark as to a lot of things around installer. So I'm very much looking forward to this conversation.
It's going to be really, really interesting. And Lucy, you've come along to explain Installershow to our audience and some of the things that you do within that. And how are you, first and foremost?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you both?
Very good. Very good.
With the
Excellent.
with the Installershow, then it's a bit of a beast that is now out in industry, and we're going to delve into all parts of that. But when did you start with them? What's your kind of background with the Installer magazine and such?
So I started working for them in 2022. So my background, I trained as a journalist originally, worked on trade press and some consumer press, and then sort of got into events as well. And yeah, just after the pandemic, I started working for Installershow. Yeah, so this will be my third show for them. Although I used to go as a visitor in my other roles as well. So I feel like I've been working there longer than I have.
So with Installershow, they did used to be a physical magazine, didn't they, back? But you've gone all digital now, is that right?
Yeah, so it was a magazine for years, and then yeah, they sort of pivoted to digital a few years ago now. And then obviously when the pandemic hit, couldn't hold any live events at all. So they sort of started to run digital events, which were really successful. And that now the sort of digital events sit alongside the live event in June every year at the NEC.
Isn't it strange how much the pandemic has changed how much we all work, all the working from home stuff, how
Yeah.
all these companies had to pivot from physically meeting and physically having documentation that would be passed around and just the sheer amount of change that it drove for the better or whichever side of the fence you sit on, better or worse, it just drove
Yeah.
so much change. And it's I didn't realize there was a magazine as well. So I am very, very naive as to all parts of this, but it's nice to see that kind of the company and what have you adapted to the pandemic, because it could have sent a lot of companies under or forced them to pack up, especially if you had a lot of print media and relied on a lot of people meeting and passing things around and all that sort of stuff. It's nice to see that they managed to pivot in time to keep things going.
Yeah, 100%. And really, I think people probably, not everybody, but some people thought that the pandemic would be the sort of end of live events because everyone would just be, no one would be bothered to travel for events anymore when you can just do everything online. But I mean, we found the exact opposite. It's almost become, I don't know, we appreciate them more because we couldn't do them for so long. We couldn't have these sort of big face-to-face events where the industry meets up. Like the first one back after the pandemic was like some kind of celebration sort of festival type thing. Everyone was so happy to be all in the same room and just doing something that felt so normal. And I think now it's just going from strength to strength. And I think people, yeah, digital gives you lots of advantages. There's loads of great digital tools, digital events. We've got our websites and our newsletters and things, but nothing is the same as being in the same room as all these people and seeing products up, in the flesh and getting sort of hands-on demos of things. You just can't replicate that. And I think people appreciate it a lot more than they ever did.
So on that then, to take things right the way back for people like myself that aren't really up to speed with installer and everything, what is installer? What is Installershow? What do you showcase? And just give everybody a bit of an idea as to what the purposes of the show and what it's all about.
So Installershow, as the name suggests, is aimed at installers. It used to historically, so it's been around since 2015 in its current format. It used to be purely for heating installers, the gas installers, plumbers, that kind of trade. and sort of increasingly it started to expand. More people were, more sort of different trades were interested in it, and increasingly it's now renewable energy installers, solar installers, heat pump installers, and also we get a big specifier audience as well. So by specifiers, people use that word in different ways, but we mean the sorts of people that work at councils, housing associations, housing developers and things, that are all interested in how homes and buildings are powered, heated, and all that kind of thing. So it's the same topics, but they just look at they're not going to be fitting the kit themselves, but they may well be choosing it and working on big projects, retrofitting 200 homes or whatever. They might be leading that. So there's sort of two different elements to our audience, which is the trades and then the specifiers. I can't remember the exact figure from 2019, but I know it was tiny. But we show people this this sort of plan of how small the show was in 2019, and it felt big at the time because it took the whole of the Rico Arena in Coventry, and it fits in a tiny little bit of the current show, and in the same way that the exhibitors and the content that we put on has grown, the visitor numbers have grown, and the visitor sort of demographic has grown. So we still 100% cater to our core audience of heating engineers and plumbers, but increasingly we also get, we're also of interest to electricians, renewable energy installers, roofers, carpenters. I mean, we've got so many different sort of multi-trade elements to it now that that's why it's sort of growing year on year.
It's difficult, but we're trying really hard to keep away from plumbers in the electrical industry. Our industries are kind of merging more and more towards each other, whether we like it or not. So the Installershow and what it does, I think it's a good thing for other trades to meet each other at these events. And just to draw back to what you said, Lucy, about Installershow coming back after the pandemic and how that felt to you as somebody organising it. We lose sight of that sometimes as attendees. That's your job at the end of the day, isn't it? Putting those events on.
Yeah.
It must have been a really difficult time not being able to do that, and having that come back into your life again. That must have been a big motivation for you for these shows ahead. And knowing what Installershow is now and the size it is now, there's obviously been a lot of work gone into that. So does it feel a bit like your baby in a way, that this has grown up through your team over the last few years?
Definitely. And I think all of us, all the people that I work with, probably feel the same. We're all very, very passionate about it, and very invested in making it work, whatever element of it that we work on. I mean, I, as you probably know, deal mainly with the content for the show. So that's we've got 10 different content theatres with different speakers and different styles of seminar and things going on. So that's my responsibility. But whether you're selling exhibition space or dealing with the marketing or whatever, everybody really wants it to work and feels really passionate about it, and we're really proud of it. I mean, there is nothing that I've ever worked on that's comparable in the way that when I was walking around the show last year, like exhibitors, speakers, visitors who know me were coming up to me and just going, "Oh my God, it's amazing, well done." I mean, that's just such a massive ego boost for 3 days. You just feel like, oh yes, everyone was just having a great time. And when you think that you've played a part in that, it is really rewarding. Whereas when I've worked on print magazines or whatever, you don't you're not standing there while people are reading the articles that you've read, getting a round of applause. So that feedback that you get at an event like ours is just, it's a real buzz. It really is.
I can imagine. In terms of numbers, Lucy, just as an overall site, is it right to say there's about 20,000 attendees and 600 or so exhibitors?
Yeah, that's right. So we had about 15,000 last year, and the sort of growth of the sort of different areas that we've grown into this year, we're expecting around 20,000 over the 3 days. So and about 600 exhibitors. We've got 250 speakers, I think, at the last count. So there's so much going on. It's just it can be a bit overwhelming. So I would suggest for anyone who's going to come along and hasn't been before, have a plan before you get there. Don't just walk in and I mean, you can do that if you want to, but
Mhm.
you know, you don't want to miss anything. So have a look at the lineup on our website, have a look at all the exhibitors, and have a plan of what you want to do. Sure, you know, set some time aside to have just a wander and look for interesting things. But I think it's really easy to miss stuff there because there's so much going on. So if there are talks that you definitely want to go to, you know, write them down. Don't forget.
Yeah, that's what I was going to come on to as well, because I found that with other shows as well. You can get so caught up with walking around and even just seeing other contractors or, you know, friends and things like that, that you end up missing maybe a full lane of the show.
Yeah.
And you kind of see on social media that someone that you wanted to speak to, like a manufacturer or
Yeah.
someone, was there, and you think, I don't even remember seeing them being there. But again, just to bring us back a little bit, for anybody that hasn't been to Installer before, when is it and where is it held at?
So it's the 25th to the 27th of June, and it's at the NEC in Birmingham. And this year we've got halls 4 and 5. So yeah, so it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's open 10 till 5 the first 2 days, and then 10 till 4 on the last day. I mean, and there's also stuff going on in the evenings as well. So if you were staying over, there's various networking things, drinks receptions. There's I'm sure you would be welcome, Mark. There is the plumber social on Wednesday evening.
I've heard lots about the plumber social. I've
Yeah.
seen lots about the plumber social.
I mean, my colleagues have been, and they're not plumbers, so I'm sure you'd be allowed in. Yeah, there's loads of different things going on. There's breakfast, meet, you know, there's so much. There's a whole sort of social plan. We've even sort of spread out so much that there's now something on the night before it opens. We're sort of getting this like fringe events. That some of them are organised by us, but some of them aren't, which is great when, you know, when other organisations organise stuff around your event. That's another thing that makes you think, yeah, it's a really good event.
Yeah, I can't remember what the plumber's called that arranged the plumber social, but it'll come to me later on. But yeah, it looks like a quite pointy. That's it. Yeah, yeah. It looks like quite an interesting event.
Yeah, I imagine
sneaking, Mark.
A few shots or heads wandering around the show the next day.
Yeah, and this year as well, we've got so we always have the merit awards on the first day in the evening, and that's where we award 3 individuals or groups sometimes that have done something like particularly good for their community, that have gone above and beyond in some way. We've had some amazing winners in the past. I can't tell you who's won this year because it's a surprise. But this year it actually coincides with the final group game for England in the Euros. Oh. So we are holding the awards a little bit earlier and then screening the football. And we've got Terry Butcher, who was England captain years ago, coming along and doing a little Q&A before. So that'll be a nice, fun event, hopefully, as long as England don't get knocked out.
Yeah, that probably will happen, won't it? I'm looking forward to that one myself, because I'm going to be at the show, and meeting Terry will be great. If I get a chance to get a selfie with him, I'd love that.
I'm sure you will. Well, he's actually going to stay. I think he's going to hang around. He's not just going to talk and go. I think he's going to stay and watch the football with us. So
brilliant. Who else is going to be there as kind of headline celebrity status?
Yeah, so we have a mix, as you know, lots of events would, of like celebrities that will just be crowd pleasers that people want to meet. They haven't necessarily got any connection to the industry. And then sorry, I can just see my cat trying to get in. And then you know, people that are sort of celebrities as far as the industry goes, that are really well known within the industry. So this year we've got Greg Jackson, who is Octopus Energy boss. We have Terry Butcher, already mentioned. We have Chris Skidmore MP, who wrote the Mission Zero report and recently resigned from government in response to Rishi's backtracking on net zero. We have Lord Callanan, who is obviously in the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, talking. We've got Deborah Meaden talking about. Sorry,
there we go. Another special guy
of the show now.
So yeah, I'm just going to check that he's going to sit down and not just stand on the keyboard. So we've got Deborah Meaden talking about green business and sort of how sustainability and growth can work together. You know, people sort of often see sustainability as some kind of challenge to be overcome, but she's going to be talking about how actually it's a real opportunity for businesses. We've got Rachel Riley from Countdown talking about careers for women in STEM. So she's going to be on a panel with some tradeswomen and other women that have worked in heating and cooling and things like that, just talking about what it's like being a woman in a mainly male dominated sector.
Yeah.
Who else have we got? I'm sure I've forgotten someone. Got George Clark coming along to talk about, in fact, I'm not sure what he's talking about, something to do with heat pumps, I think.
Yeah, I think he's an ambassador for Mitsubishi, I think, isn't he?
That's right, yeah.
A lot of Mitsubishi stuff. But it sounds like you've got a hell of a guest list. Yeah, that's why it's so important to plan these sort of things, isn't it? And arrive.
Yeah.
Trying with even if it's just a general overview of who you want to see or who you want to meet.
Yeah.
And where they are, because these, as the show grows, I'm sure it gets harder and harder to try and find where you are within that show. So to come prepared, I think is good. Because I don't know about you, Matt, I've wandered around these all day for sometimes multiple days, and I see something on the last day. I'm thinking, where the heck has that been for the past 2 days? So yeah, come prepared and what have you.
For sure. I mean, you can spend your lifetime in there just talking to people. But I think at Installer, have you got some product launches as well that are kind of new and not currently known?
Yeah, so we have quite a lot of manufacturers that choose to sort of hold off on product launches so that they can do them at the show, which again is really great for us. So we've got there's a new product showcase on our website where you can see all the rule is they have to have not been available at last year's show. So that will be things that were launched in the last year. And then we've got stuff that we haven't published yet because it's still under embargo that's actually going to be launched at the show. So yeah, I mean, the best thing for that is just to stay tuned on our socials to see where things are being launched, and we will be able to tease stuff the sort of week before, but at the moment I can't tell you, I'm afraid. In fact, Mark, you'll be trying out some brand new tools that I can't tell you about in the tool demo zone for us.
Sounds good. Do we get to keep them and bring them home afterwards as well, or we've got to give them back?
I'm not.
That's not a no.
Sure.
That's not an immediate no, is it?
It's the 2 pairs. No, that's good. And listening to this, obviously, you mentioned about it's gone from your core base as really plumbing, heating engineers, and that's kind of where it started. What was the thinking behind moving that more into the renewables side? Because I attended last year. Because I heard there was a lot more renewable stuff, and there was a lot more manufacturers there. It's still quite plumbing, heating heavy, which was still very interesting, but there was more battery manufacturers, panel manufacturers. There was loads going on. What was the thought process behind trying to sort of venture out from the plumbing and heating world?
It was several things really. I think I mean, firstly, a lot of heating engineers and plumbers themselves have been exploring other technologies. Look, the sort of gas installers installing heat pumps now, or some of them doing solar and things like that. So retraining, upskilling, whatever you want to call it, to expand their businesses and sort of future-proof them, I guess. So partly it was to meet the demand from our audience, and we do a lot of research with the audience all year round about what they want to see, what are the things that interest them, and that is one of the biggest topics for them. Another thing that I think is a quite obvious thing to sort of lead us that way would be legislation. So as legislation changes and we see, is solar going to be mandatory on new build or whatever, it makes sense that that's going to be where people are spending money. So we need to offer that to our audience because they're going to be asked to install it. So it was a kind of obvious shift as the world is changing and how we heat and power our buildings is changing. So what we offer to our audience has to change as well. So it partly came from them and partly came from us, and sort of it was a nice meeting in the middle. And also increasingly, and I mean, Mark's written about this for Installer because he writes a monthly column for Installer for us. He's written about this before, but increasingly the trades have to work together on these projects, maybe more than they did previously, because it's not, that if you're talking about like a whole house retrofit, you can't do that without talking to each other, sorry. So, it makes sense again to sort of offer the audience things that are cross trade and maybe things that they wouldn't have worked on before, because increasingly if they want to get a chunk of that work and get a slice of the money that's being spent on these things, they're going to need these skills and they're going to need to know about this stuff. So it just kind of all, it's like a perfect storm really for this kind of stuff coming together.
Suppose, and you'll find it as well, Matt, we obviously, as electricians, we joke and we jest about the rivalry between all the different trades, like plumbing and electrician is probably the biggest one.
Yeah.
But the reality is an electrician probably wouldn't go to an all plumbing show, and then a plumber wouldn't go to an all electricians show or what have you. So to actually have that merge together, so you have to, you have to walk past a combi boiler or a heat pump or all these other bits. It kind of gives you a reason to actually drop in and check, because you would feel a bit of a outlier if you went to just a plumbing and heating show as an electrician, and vice versa for plumbing and heating engineers as well. So I know when I went last year, I went around a lot of the heat pump stands, because that's what we're really interested in, and also a lot of the electric boiler stands as well, and some of the hybrids between gas and heat pumps as well. And that was really interesting, because I didn't go there with the intention of spending the majority of my time chatting to heat pump manufacturers and actually installers as well that were doing those sort of installations. But with it all being in one place and kind of next to maybe a solar stand, you kind of ended up just doing that anyway, because the conversations led you to, have you seen, that stand over there that talks a bit more about the section we've just been talking about? And, you kind of get pushed around at these shows a little bit as well, which is really good. And I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, like you say, it's one of those, isn't it, where plumbers and electricians are usually fighting over space to put a boiler or a consumer unit or cables and pipes. Getting those in one place and working together. Full credit to Installer, because you may be bringing peace to otherwise fractious relationship. Next, you'll have to solve the problem with plaster as far as Lucy, if you can get those guys and girls on board. That'd be brilliant.
Well, I mean, I do like to think of myself as like the UN of tradespeople. But yeah, no, plasterers, we haven't actually got any plasterers involved in the trades area this year. Sorry, just to explain, because I realise I haven't. So there's a new area for the show this year, which Mark is involved with, called Installer Trades, and it's a tool demo and workwear zone. So anyone that wants to see Mark on the catwalk, that's where you need to go.
Me.
But then, so we've got like a multi-trade approach there. So we've got a roofer, a carpenter, renewables installers, electricians, plumbers, heating engineers. We've got a couple of apprentices. So it's going to be a really lovely, hopefully friendly environment with everybody demoing different things, new products and things. So definitely head there to see Mark in action. But yeah, we haven't got a plasterer, but we've got people doing sort of kitchen fitting stuff, some new electrical tools, which I'm sure you'll be interested in. We've got this big thing that I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say or not, but anyway, it's something that a house builder would use to make a big hole in the ground. That's all I'm saying about it. So so there's loads of different stuff going on in there, which I just think again shows like Mark was saying, getting everybody together and working together on a project where you might previously not have seen each other deliberately maybe, but now you have to, and now we're all going to be friends.
Is there technical content there as well, Lucy, outside of the stands and displays? Have you got sort of CPD seminars and stuff going on around the event as well?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of that going on, delivered by various organisations, a lot of a lot of whom you'll already know. So MCS, NAPIT, NIC, EIC, electrical safety first. Is that
That's
right?
the one. That's the one.
I was going to say electrical safety trust, sorry. Electrical safety first. Who else? We've got the Heat Pump Association. Yeah, there's loads of different stuff going on that's CPD accredited by different bodies. And then there's sort of more just sort of interesting panel discussions. And then there's some sort of informative, more hands-on type stuff with people, for example, doing a heat loss calculation demo. Yeah, I mean, that we've got loads of exhibitors actually who do a lot of seminars and things on their stands as well. So, I mean, a lot of the time we don't even know about, their program or whatever until really close to the show. But yeah, so Heat Geek, for example, actually. So Heat Geek, who you may or may not know, heat pump experts. So they've got a stand this year, and they've got a theatre on their stand, and they've got an amazing program content going on. That's outside of our content. So there's so much. I really don't understand how anyone could come in and not find something really useful there. There's just so much going on, wherever your interests lie.
Do you think, well, I kind of answered my own question here a little bit, but do you think in this world of social media and YouTube, and where you can research a lot of this stuff, you can find out what new products are coming out by, websites and new videos and things? Do you think there's still a place for these big gatherings of in this case tradespeople, when social media is such a massive place to still get a lot of your information from?
I think the two work together. I mean, obviously we do a lot of social media as well, and a lot of digital content, and as do all our exhibitors. But they're just, people like working with people, even like antisocial people like me. I mean, it's just, you can't replicate that on social media. You can't see the product, you can't, touch it, you can't ask specific questions, or you can, but you might not know who's answering, and it's just, yeah, I think the two work really well together, but I don't think you can replicate that kind of going to a show and the off the cuff conversations that you might have with people that you weren't even necessarily going to talk to, but you just bump into or whatever, and then whole sort of things develop and things like that.
I suppose it's a little bit like the situation I just mentioned, where I went last year and I was very interested in the standard stuff that I see at Solar Storage Live, all these other different shows like the inverters, the batteries, the panels. But I could probably have seen some of that on social media, on websites, on videos. But what I couldn't do is then look to my right a little bit and see a heat pump stand and think, I'm going to go and have a chat to them. And because I probably wouldn't have been looking for it online. So I do, to give my opinion on my own question, I think there's definitely a place for these sorts of shows. And like you mentioned, during the pandemic, where people just were not seeing other people, tradespeople were not, seeing that many people that were kind of in houses on their own, or, barricaded away from the customers and all this sort of stuff, because we didn't really know what was going on. As soon as those restrictions got lifted and people could meet again, it was just like a tsunami, wasn't it? And it was like a big party, because you were able to see other tradespeople. And I think actually, if we started at this level before the pandemic and then we dropped, it leapt above the level of how interactive people were and how collaborative people were after the pandemic, in my view, because we'd all missed each other. I think we'd all missed face-to-face conversation. So I do think shows like this are really beneficial, because you can't plan and you can't research the off-the-cuff conversations like you've mentioned.
Yeah.
people that you would just never have thought of speaking to. Have you had any really good conversations that you can think of, Mark?
Yeah, again, the shows, it's putting product in people's hands as well, I think. You can see it on YouTube, you can kind of research and watch stuff, but going and physically interacting with something, be it a battery storage system or a solar panel or a heat pump or whatever, you know, you can't get that online. And then the social aspect to it is brilliant. I went to Installer CEF show last year as well. And both of those, the interaction with other contractors was the main takeaway, I'd say, from that for me.
Yeah.
You know, seeing all the great exhibitors and stuff is fantastic, but just getting around other people, sharing views on the stuff you're looking at as well. Because it could be that I think, you know, this battery system's brilliant, but you might be stood next to me going, well, you've seen this one over here, Mark, or whatever. And you don't get that online with your own research. So I think the two, as Lucy said, kind of match up well together, I reckon.
Yeah, I think as well on that, we might have been both looking at the same product, but we've had different conversations with the person exhibiting that. I've picked up on something that you haven't, and you've picked up on something that I haven't. And actually having that face-to-face conversation about that product or that service, whatever it is that we've seen, means that we end up both benefiting from what we've both picked up, you know. So you can't see it all, you can't take it all in. So to have those conversations is really good. And that's what I'm quite interested in with the social aspect of this, because I feel like the trades have become a lot more social, and through social media, but also through these shows. I feel like we do all want to interact with each other a lot more now than say like my dad's generation, where it was very much down the pub. You didn't talk about how you did something because you didn't want the other tradesperson to nick it. Now we're all sharing this stuff at shows like this, where, you know, you're doing actual, you know, examples of work and you know, people showing how they do things like the heat loss stuff, and people are sharing ideas now a lot more than they were, which is really good, because it hopefully and in theory lifts the standard of how everybody does things, because we're all learning together off the back of what how each other do whatever it is that we're showcasing. So yeah, I do think there's a big need for these shows to continue.
I mean, I would say as well, you know, the social element of it, although, you know, it's not, you might just think, oh, it's just, you know, having a beer or whatever, but, you know, a lot of installers will primarily work on their own all the time. You know, then they don't have that kind of interaction. And I know when I've spoken to installers on social media, and that, you know, particularly in the pandemic, as you say, and they, you know, they felt even more isolated. So although it might seem quite kind of frivolous, or, you know, to go all the way there just to go and have a beer with some people, but those kind of human connections are really important to people, particularly to meet people that have got the same sorts of challenges as you know, be working on similar projects that you're working on, or, you know, might have had a similar tricky customer or something, you know, someone that you can really relate to. You know, that's gold, really. It's really important. We forget that we are, you know, social creatures.
Yeah, in terms of, you know, your I'm going to say babies within the installer show, there's two things that spring out to mind for me. One is trades talk, and one is the installer futures, which I know are two things that you're passionate about, as am I as well. Could you explain what those two things are to people
Yeah,
listening?
of course. So Trades Talk's not an installer thing. Trades Talk I set up in a previous job in 2017. So it was a weekly Twitter chat that still goes on now, but 8 p.m. every Tuesday on Twitter using the hashtag Trades Talk. So, I mean, it's definitely not what it once was now, partly because I left for a couple of years and partly because of Elon Musk. But you know, in its prime, it was just, you know, my phone used to almost would be too hot to touch. The notifications were going that crazy. I mean, you know, Mark, you've been involved in it probably since it started, I would imagine. And so every week there's a different topic. Sometimes it's something silly like films or music or something. Sometimes it's more serious like tool theft or mental health, or, you know, dealing with tricky customers or whatever. And everybody gets together and has a discussion. We've had live meetups. We've got another one this year at Installershow, as Mark said. And during the pandemic, it was you know, it was I don't think it's too far to say that it was a bit of a lifeline for some people who were struggling with it all mentally, just to come together and talk to other people once a week on Twitter. I mean, it sounds really silly, but it was really helpful for people. I mean, we've done a couple of 24-hour tweetathons for charity where a different person took an hour of the chat for 24 hours. We did Stars in the Trades, which was like a stars in their eyes spoof with some of the regular participants singing and dancing. What else have we done? We did Trades Talk Live, which was like a live panel discussion at a show. So we've done loads of different things, and yeah, and hopefully there's more to come unless Twitter dies completely. But it's yeah, it's really popular, and it's a real multi-trade, you know, nice, friendly environment where everybody sort of chats to each other. And I know people have got like really good friends that they've met in real life and that they're still friends with as a result of it, which I think, you know, for me as someone who runs it, is nice to hear.
It's a lovely
then-
initiative, certainly on Twitter, which sometimes gets a bit of a bad rep of the social media platforms. For that to have sprung up, Lucy, it's brilliant. I remember some of the chats that would go on for a couple of days after the hour-long session as well. I'd still
Yeah.
get notifications from somebody's topic of discussion that had popped up. It's just brilliant. It's a really, really good use of social media. So massive credit to you for bringing that.
Do you know what? I always tell people this story. So I was really ill in hospital for a couple of months, and I was actually in a coma and unconscious for weeks. And one of the first things I did when I woke up and got my phone working was log into it and tweet hello to everyone. And it was just like, I was really like I don't know, just I'd missed everyone even though I was unconscious. But yeah, I mean, my colleagues at the time had been running it in my absence, but it was yeah, like the sort of level of like kindness and stuff that came towards me from everyone on there, who most of whom had never met me, didn't know anything about me really. It was really lovely. It's a really nice group of people.
And in Installer Futures,
Yes.
something that is show specific, but you're trying to grow outside of that this year, I believe. Well, I know you are because I'm involved with that to a degree as well. Can you explain what that is as well for us?
Yeah, sure. So Installer Futures is about the future of the industry, and yeah, so you know, at the sort of basic level, it's a day of the show that we dedicate to you know, the next generation. So we get all the colleges come along, and there's the sort of apprentices and things will come, and there's a sort of tailored program of content for them, and we'll take them to certain stands that will be of interest for them. And it's just a way to yeah, to speak to the sort of up and comers, if you like, as far as installers go. This year we've broadened it out quite a lot, so it's, you know, people that are doing apprenticeships in like retrofit, renewable energy, loads of different technologies that we might not have covered in the past. And we've also got an advisory board now, which Mark is part of, to really kind of shape the content for the show and find out what are the skills that people should be learning now. What are the skills that are we likely to need? Where are the gaps? Where are the opportunities? You know, how can companies work with apprentices or work with colleges to, you know, tap into this sort of talent? There's loads of different elements to it, but it's on the final day of the show on the Thursday when most of the Installer Future stuff's happening. But yeah, I mean, you've been part of it, part of the advisory board, Mark, haven't you, since it was set up?
Yeah, we came down to a meeting in London. I can't remember when it was now. Everything turned into a blur beyond a week ago. But yeah, it's good to see the participants you've got there as well. MCS were there. There was people from EAL as well, and you know, wider industry. So it's using your power as a group at Installer to facilitate those people coming together with the objective of improving things for everybody. I think that's full credit to you, and certainly when it's not going to be low cost having an event at the NEC, I'm sure, but to dedicate time within that program for the future of industry, you know, the payback for you probably isn't there at that level. So full credit to you for making that happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's really important, isn't it? I mean, there's other there's other shows that I've been to, you know, that don't have that kind of focus on the next generation. And I think it's really short-sighted to not focus on that, and to not I don't know, highlight the different opportunities that there are out there, and also, like you say, to work together to try and make things better for everyone. I mean, you'll know, Mark, because I've seen you share stuff like this on social, where, you know, people can't find apprenticeships, and, you know, there's these youngsters that are really keen and they don't know where to start, or they, you know, or they lose their apprenticeship halfway through, or, you know, whatever it may be. You know, to make that process easier for everyone, and to make, you know, businesses realize how they can get involved, and that it's not you know, it's not something to be scared of, and it's something that they might actually, you know, might actually be good for their business. It's really important.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes with apprentices, you forget, even though we've both been apprentices, of at one point, you kind of forget what it's like being an apprentice when you've got the troubles of running your own company, and you know, even if you're an employee of a company, your day-to-day struggles, that you forget that when you're an apprentice, you're worried about, you know, maybe trying to find your little niche, or you know, worried about the security of your job, and if something happens, where do you go? So to actually put these sorts of events on, where they can meet up, they can get some advice, they can, you know, talk to each other, they can maybe, you know, do a bit of interaction with employers and other people. I think that's really good, because even if they're in a secure environment, it kind of shows that there is a bit of a community out there that will be there to help them. And there is a lot of, from what I've seen, I know you're quite heavily involved with it all, Matt, but there is quite a lot of talk of people struggling to find apprenticeships, and, you know, being stranded halfway through an apprenticeship, or, you know, at some stage through the apprenticeship,
Yeah.
have been dropped. And it's stressful, especially when you're trying to work to this golden age of getting all your qualifications, and then being able to either set up on your own or do more jobs that are of a higher requirement, because you've now got all of your tickets, and, you know, maybe going around the world, even to, you know, because as soon as you get that qualification, you kind of got a passport to wherever you want to be. And to get dropped during quite a vulnerable stage, I think, is quite stressful for youngsters that are coming into the industry. So yeah, I agree, and I second that. You want to be proud of putting some time and effort into that, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that will value that as a feature of the show, even if that you don't get any reward for it now. It's paying that forward, isn't it, as to when they're coming to the show as an owner of a company, or, you know, they help advertise it or whatever. It definitely pays forward.
I think as well, I mean, the show is just so, like, for a lot of apprentices or young people, or even career changers that are new to the industry, you know, they won't have seen anything like it before. It's you know, it's very, very impressive to walk in, and I think it sort of shows them, gives them a bit of reassurance about the industry, maybe about this is all the exciting stuff that's happening in the industry that you're going to work in. You know, it's a sort of I don't know, like a glimpse into their future for them as well, to see, you know, what they might be installing, projects they might be working on. You know, they're not being taken to a conference where there's, like, you know, one seminar and there's nothing to look at. It is an impressive spectacle, particularly if you've never been before. You know, they'll walk in and be like, bloody hell, it's actually enormous.
Yeah,
That's a good point, because sometimes when you're in your work role, you get quite blinkered to what you're doing, don't you? You might just be sticking containment on the wall as an apprentice for weeks at a time, and you think, God, is this all this is ever going to be? And then you go to an event like that, and you're like, wow, you know, the options that are available to me over the long term are vast. So looking to the future, Lucy, as these apprentices maybe would be, is there changes at the Installershow that you're looking to do? Were you looking to spread your wings even wider?
Yeah, so there's a few areas where we're developing. So, I mean, a couple of things that I haven't mentioned because it's less relevant for you guys, but we've got a new kitchens area this year. So we've had bathrooms, obviously, previously, naturally, with plumbing, but we've got kitchens as well this year. including this really cool Kitchen of the Future exhibition, which was previously at a university, but we've now got it, and it's about making kitchens sort of future proof, so people can stay in their own homes as they get older. So there's some quite sort of nifty kit in there that means that it's like adaptable as we all age, to make things easier to use, and so people can stay, hang on to a bit of independence. So that's just one part of the kitchen area. But so we've got some cool things like that happening that we'll be developing more for next year. We'll have a lot more roofing stuff going on next year. Sorry, I'm just looking at the list of things I'm allowed to talk about.
Come on, give us some exclusives.
Have to sign the
Well, I
official
did just before I came on, I did message my boss and say, hang on a minute, is this XYZ public or not yet? And he said, no, not yet. So I can't talk about that. So we'll be doing more on flooring, tiles and surfaces, which again is kind of linked to the kitchen and bathroom area. A lot more on smart tech as well, which we have a little bit of in the sense of like building controls and heat pump controls and things like that. But we'll be doing more of that stuff as well, more kind of digital construction type things, because it all kind of links into that electrification story that we all know about. So what else am I allowed to talk about? Oh yes, cooling. Actually, well, cooling is kind of new for this year, actually, but we'll be doing more of it next year. So cooling is not something that most domestic heating engineers will have ever really thought about. But as our audience also covers people that are working on big buildings, cooling does tend to be more of a part of it. So we've partnered up with a few organisations this year to host a lot more content that sort of covers heating and cooling. We've got World Refrigeration Days happening on the Wednesday. So there'll be some speakers coming in from various parts of the world to talk about that, and just the kind of, I guess, the sort of transferable skills that for people that work in heating, to maybe see what other opportunities there are out there. I mean, we've got a session, for example, on supermarkets. So people that are engineers that are working on supermarkets, which obviously have huge cooling requirements. And that's unlikely to change anytime soon. And also how the kind of the technology that works for heating can be used for cooling. I mean, that doesn't really happen that much in this country, I'm led to believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, you know more than I do, but that we don't, domestically anyway, use heat pumps for cooling really in this country. So that's a sort of natural way for us to grow into that area. So I think we'll be doing a lot more on that, particularly with temperatures going up allegedly. I mean, I'm not a global warming denier, I'm just saying that because it's been really rubbish lately.
Yeah, I think it opens up people's eyes, like you mentioned, Mark, that you maybe weren't aware of a certain area of your job that you could actually walk straight into with minimal resistance, really. For example, people doing a lot of heating systems, learning a little bit more about the cooling systems, it's probably not too dissimilar. And I'm sure when we get some plumbing and heating engineers on, we can ask them that question as to, have you looked at that element of your job? Because I know we've seen in my business, when we're doing solar and battery stuff, we see more and more customers say, oh, I've got heating and cooling in a couple of rooms. And like you mentioned, as temperatures continue to rise, and we're looking, some temperatures get into the 40s, we're not used to that sort of thing. So our homes haven't been really set up for that sort of temperatures. So people are having to look. They go around the world on holiday and they see these aircon units and all these different things that we're not used to in this country, but are probably going to become more common because we are starting to get a different climate than what we have had over the past 100 years. So I think trying to showcase that sort of stuff is really important, because even if people aren't asking the question as to how do I get into cooling, physically by just going to a show like this, that allows you to almost have the question asked of, have you thought about going into cooling? And then your brain starts going, actually, Mrs. Smith was asking me about air conditioning units and things like that, and it kind of it ignites something in your mind to go, that is actually a really good thing that I'm going to do a bit more investigation on. And obviously, as those companies that are showcasing that equipment there, they are going to be the companies that installer is most probably going to contact to get more information on their products, because they've probably had a really good conversation about it. So again, it's that face-to-face conversations, and sharing knowledge, and actually being asked questions that you never even thought about before, because you've seen a product there that you've then related to something that you were maybe asked a year ago about cooling systems. So that's good. Have you I'm on the hunt. On our first episode, I said that I'm really interested in hydrogen, and I think there was a couple of hydrogen boiler exhibitors there, which has some really good conversations on. So how do you look at do you kind of invite people on, or do you kind of go, right, we're going to, for example, like with the renewable side, do you go, right, we want 10 renewables people here this year, or we want 10 battery manufacturers, we want 10 solar manufacturers? How do you kind of go, this is what we want to try and expand the show into? Or do you just let people inquire to you as to, we've got this hydrogen boiler, do you mind if we come and showcase it?
I mean, we've got a sort of sales team that will work out where the opportunities for growth are for us, what makes the most sense in terms of, tangents that we might take to different sectors or different products. Obviously the sales guys will know who these people are trying to target. So if they're trying to target people that come to our show anyway, then obviously it makes sense to have a conversation with them. We do also get contacted by people that have just heard about it and want to come along as well. But I mean, I obviously don't do any of the sales, as you can probably tell. So so I don't know exactly how they prioritize who they want to get. I mean, a lot of it probably comes from our market research as well, in terms of who the visitors want to see. Like, who would you love us to have at the show? What products ranges would you like to see there? And then we try and deliver what they've asked for as much as we can. In terms of speakers, which is where I'm more comfortable. So what we do with the speaker program is I draw up, not on my own, but with my colleagues. So we draw up like a dream plan of this. If money was no object for the ones that we have to pay for, and every person said yes, this is our dream speaker program, and we kind of reverse engineer it from there. So we'll go out to everyone that's on our dream plan, and we'll get some no's, and some people will be too expensive and blah blah blah, and then we end up with something that's, to be honest, is pretty close to what we wanted at the beginning. So when you're talking about things like hydrogen boilers, or I don't know, or smart tariffs or whatever, so there's a list of topics that I definitely want included, as well as people. And so I will start with, this is my ideal speaker on hydrogen, and then if they say no, which thankfully they haven't, and then I'll sort of build a panel around it. So so that's kind of how it works, and to make sure that all the topics that our audience is interested in are covered, and covered, in a way that the audience is going to find useful. So that might be a mix of panel discussions and then more sort of CPD accredited stuff, depending on what the topic is. So at the end of all that, hopefully we have quite a balanced program of fun stuff and more serious stuff, and the topics that people want to know about. I mean, I could put 300 heat pump sessions on and they would all be rammed, because everybody wants to know about heat pumps. Still, there's a lot of demand for heat pump knowledge, whether that's how to get trained, how to switch from a gas background, to high temperature heat pumps, ground source. There's still a lot of demand for heat pump content, but that wouldn't really be a very balanced program. So we try and get enough heat pump stuff in there to be covering all the latest developments and the stuff that people might need to know about. But yeah, we also cover all the other different topics as well, as much as we can.
That's really interesting, Lucy. I think you've given us a really good insight to what the Installer Show is and the things you're working on and trying to do. Before we end this podcast, is there anything else you want to add to the discussion?
No, I don't think so. Just come along, definitely. The website is installershow.com. Mark will be modelling. I have mentioned that once already.
You'll be putting people off from coming if you keep sharing that too much.
Quite the contrary, I'm going to be there. What I want to know is if Mark was too expensive to speak at this, and he had to be dropped down to modelling. But yeah.
Well, are you suggesting that he would charge more for speaking than he would for modelling?
I'm leaving that to the audience, so leave that in the comments. But,
it's the first time we've done the workwear catwalk, and it's going to be so much fun. It's going to be brilliant, and I'm sure Mark will be a star. So definitely come along.
In for a penny, in for a pound, quite literally. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a great event as a whole. I'm really excited to attend, and I will drop links in the description alongside this episode for anyone who is interested and you want to come along. I will be there for the whole 3 days. There is also the Safe Isolation campaign that I'm involved with, and the Installer Show put a free stand on for that. So thank you, Lucy, for playing your role in helping make that happen as well.
You're welcome.
Otherwise, if anyone's got any comments or questions around this episode, please do drop them in below. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you've enjoyed or not enjoyed the content. And I'll let Sam take us out as a final closing segment on this one.
Yep. All I wanted to say was thanks very much, Lucy, for coming and giving us that rundown. And yeah, probably bringing a lot more people to Installer. And yeah, I've learned a lot by our conversation, and we'll definitely be heading down there. So yeah, if you do want to head down, then it sounds like there's a lot to see there. So thanks very much, Lucy, for that. But like Matt said, if you like this episode and any of our other episodes, then please like, subscribe, and share around as well. We want to get the conversations going within industry and with people like Lucy and the shows like Installer. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.